Okay, let's unpack this then. Today, we're diving deep into Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. This is the third book in the Empyrean series, the one everyone was waiting for, dropped January 21st, 2025. Now, you shared a really great review, and I think our mission today is to really get into what made this book such a huge deal. I mean, fastest selling adult fantasy in the UK, over 2.7 million copies first week. That's massive. But also, let's be honest about maybe where it didn't quite land for everyone. It's such a prime example of romantasy, isn't it? That whole mix of high fantasy, action, and really intense romance.
Absolutely. And what's really fascinating, I think, is how Onyx Storm just nails that specific appeal of romantasy. Yaros is, well, she's really skilled at weaving the action, the dragon drama, the politics, weaving it all directly with that passionate romantic tension. It's not just, fantasy with romance on the side. The romance often is the plot driver in a way. So in this deep dive, we'll look at the epic feel, the emotional hits, and the world building too. It gets so much bigger, right? Journeys to new islands, different cultures, challenges way beyond just Basquiat.
Right, moving past the Academy walls.
Exactly. And we have got to talk about the payoff in the second half, which is, well, phenomenal. And that cliffhanger, wow, Violet losing her memories and Andarna, and finding out she's legally married to Xaden. I mean, the fan theories just exploded after that.
Oh, completely. It was everywhere. But like you said, no book this big avoids some criticism, right? It definitely faced some pushback. I'm thinking about the pacing, particularly in the first half. Some people felt it dragged a bit, repetitive scenes, maybe some info dumps. What was causing that initial slowdown, do you think?
Yeah, that's a fair point. I think the start felt a bit slower because, well, Yarros had a lot to introduce. Suddenly, we've got these new places, these new iridescent beings, the Irids, and we're going deeper into the Venin lore. So this big world expansion, which I think pays off later, it did need quite a bit of exposition up front. Some readers found that a bit dense, maybe slowed the momentum, but I'd argue was kind of necessary for what happens later.
Okay, that makes sense. Setting the stage. And what about the romance itself and the dialogue? Heard it called polarizing. Some found Xaden's lines maybe a bit edgy, or even cringy was a word used. Though, I gotta say, sometimes those intense declarations really felt like they matched the high stakes for me. What's your take on that split?
It's definitely a love it or hate it kind of thing for some people. If you're deep into romantasy, that super intense, maybe slightly over the top dialogue, that's often part of the appeal. It cranks up the emotional drama, the angst. That's what the genre thrives on. But yeah, for others, maybe newer readers, it can feel a bit much, a bit theatrical, comes down to taste, really.
And another point people raised was about Violet's agency.
Ah, yes. That came up quite a bit. People feeling she became maybe too dependent on Xaden.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She's obviously incredibly powerful, but her story, her choices in this book became very, very tied up with Xaden. Some felt her own decision-making got a bit lost sometimes, overshadowed by protecting him or reacting to him, which, for a character who started out so fiercely independent, felt like a step back to some readers. It taps into that whole balancing act in the genre epic romance versus strong individual arcs.
So putting it all together then, the huge success, the world building, the action, but also the pacing issues and these character debates, how does it balance out? Well, I think this deep dive helps clarify who this book is really for. If you want that intense ride, dragons, big love, angst, pure escapism, you'll probably love it. But others might find those elements a struggle. If we were to give it quick scores, maybe like a 3 out of 5 for pacing because of that start, but a strong 4 for world beating. It is ambitious. Romance and dialogue, maybe another 3 just because it was so polarizing. But action and drama, easily a 4.5 out of 5. So overall, maybe a solid 4 out of 5, especially for existing fans.
Right. So what does this all really mean for you, the listener? Onyx Storm is definitely bold. It's emotional. It's clearly designed to hit those sweet spots for romantasy fans and anyone invested in this series.
Yeah, looking at the bigger picture, even with that slower start, the payoff is huge. And that ending is just wow. It completely changes the game and leaves you desperate for book 4. It's a must-read if you loved Fourth Wing and Iron Flame. But definitely, brace yourself for those emotional dips in that massive cliffhanger. If intense romance or slower patches aren't really your thing, maybe approach it with a bit more caution.
The whole deep dive into Onyx Storm, it really highlights something interesting. How a book can be this massive commercial success story, yet at the same time, sparks so much debate among readers. It kind of leaves you wondering, doesn't it? For a genre like romantasy, where exactly is that perfect balance between giving fans the high-stakes drama and the character arcs they expect, and delivering, consistently tight pacing and maybe dialogue that appeals more broadly? And just how much does a really shocking cliffhanger fuel that engagement and excitement, even when other parts get mixed reviews? Something to think about.